My dad looked me in the eye and said, "We're selling your apartment to help your sister." I called my lawyer and replied, "Try selling a house you don't own again, and you'll be explaining it to the police." I've owned my apartment for 5 years now. I worked hard, saved aggressively through my 20s, and finally managed to buy this place in a decent neighborhood. It's not fancy, but it's mine. I paid for it. My name is on the deed, and I've put a lot of work into making it comfortable. My relationship with my parents has always been strained. They've consistently favored my younger sister Jennifer, 32F, over me. While I was expected to work for everything I got, Jennifer received financial support for college, down payments for cars, and regular monetary gifts. When I brought this up, I was told that Jennifer needed more help, or that I was capable of managing on my own. I accepted this dynamic years ago and focused on building my own life. Last week, I was coming home from the gym when my neighbor Mrs. Wilson stopped me in the hallway. She's a retired teacher who's lived in the building for decades and knows everyone. "James, I've been meaning to ask you about the sale," she said casually. I had no idea what she was talking about. "What sale? Your apartment? Your parents mentioned you got a promotion and are moving to a bigger place. They've been showing people around for the past few weeks." I stood there completely dumbfounded. "My parents have been showing my apartment to people." Mrs. Wilson looked confused. "Yes, they come by with interested buyers. I've seen them at least 3 times now." "Are you saying you're not selling?" "No, I'm not selling my apartment. I didn't even know about this." She looked genuinely concerned. "Oh dear. Well, they have a key. I assumed you knew. They told everyone they're helping you sell it because you're too busy with your new position." I thanked her for letting me know and immediately called my parents. My father answered, and when I asked him about it, he laughed it off. He claimed Mrs. Wilson was confused and that they had only stopped by once to check on the place while I was at work, but something didn't add up. Mrs. Wilson might be in her 70s, but she's sharp as a tack. She wouldn't make this up, and she specifically mentioned multiple visits with different people. I decided to press further. "Dad, Mrs. Wilson said you told people I got a promotion and a moving. Why would you say that?" There was a pause. "Well, we were thinking it would be good for you to upgrade. Your sister needs help with her new business, and your place would fetch a good price in the current market." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So you have been showing my apartment to people without my permission with plans to sell it?" "Don't be dramatic, James. We're just exploring options. Your sister is struggling and you've always been the stable one. Family helps family." I was speechless. "Dad, I own this apartment. You can't sell it. It's not yours to sell." "Well, technically we could get power of attorney if needed. You're not thinking clearly about family priorities." I hung up the phone completely stunned. I immediately called a locksmith to change my locks first thing tomorrow morning. Then I called my sister to see if she knew about this. She answered nervously, and it became clear she was fully aware of the plan. She actually tried to justify it, saying she needed the money more for her latest business venture. And since I was doing fine, I should be willing to help. I'm still trying to process all this. My parents duplicated my key. They had one for emergencies. Have been entering my home without permission, showing it to strangers, and actively planning to sell my property without my consent, all to give the money to my sister. I've already contacted a lawyer who advised me to 1. Change the locks immediately, 2. Install security cameras, 3. Send a formal cease and desist letter, 4. Document everything, 5. File a police report about the unauthorized entry. I'll be doing all of these things tomorrow. I just can't wrap my head around how my own parents could think this was acceptable on any level. How do you even begin to confront this kind of betrayal? Update: my parents have been showing my apartment to potential buyers. I caught them in the act. It's been 3 weeks since my last post, and the situation has escalated in ways I never imagined possible. After changing my locks and installing security cameras, I thought my parents would back off, especially since I made it abundantly clear that what they were doing was illegal. I was wrong. Last Friday, I was supposed to be at work, but I took a half day off to deal with some apartment maintenance issues. Around 2 p.m., my phone buzzed with a security alert showing my parents at my door with a real estate agent and a couple I'd never seen before. My parents looked shocked when they realized their key no longer worked. I watched through the camera as my father explained to the confused agent that there must be some mistake with the lock. The real estate agent looked uncomfortable checking her paperwork while the potential buyers whispered to each other. I decided to confront them directly. I quietly took the elevator down, walked around to the building's main entrance, and came up behind them just as they were debating what to do next. "Can I help you?" I asked calmly. My mother jumped, and my father's face went from surprise to defiant in seconds. "James, what are you doing home?" my mother asked nervously. "I live here. The better question is, what are you doing here with these people?" The real estate agent stepped forward, clearly confused. "I'm Susan Jenkins from Metropolitan Realty. Your parents contracted our services to sell this property. They said you were aware of the listing." She held out her hand, which I didn't shake. "I'm James Thompson. I own this apartment, and I have never authorized anyone to sell it. My parents do not have any ownership stake in this property, nor do they have power of attorney or any legal right to sell it." The potential buyers looked mortified and quickly excused themselves. The real estate agent's professional demeanor faltered as she realized what was happening. "Do you have documentation proving your ownership?" she asked me. "Yes, I do. The deed is in my name. I can show you right now." I unlocked my door and retrieved my deed while everyone waited awkwardly in the hallway. My father tried to pull me aside, hissing that I was making a scene and embarrassing the family. I ignored him completely. After showing the deed to Miss Jenkins, her expression changed from confusion to horror. She apologized profusely, explaining that my parents had provided what appeared to be legitimate documentation, claiming joint ownership of the property. She promised to investigate how this happened and terminated their listing agreement on the spot. After she left, I finally confronted my parents directly. "You forged documents?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "We didn't forge anything," my father insisted. "We just had some papers drawn up showing our investment in your future. We helped you become who you are. You didn't contribute a single dollar to this apartment. I saved for years to buy it." My mother stepped in, her tone soothing but condescending. "James, dear, family assets are meant to be shared. Your sister's business venture is struggling, and this apartment would solve everything. You can always buy another place. It's not like you'd be homeless." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The sheer entitlement and distortion of reality left me speechless. "This conversation is over. You are no longer welcome in my home or my life until you acknowledge what you've done and make genuine amends. The next time you show up here, I'll call the police and press charges for attempted fraud, trespassing, and whatever else my lawyer suggests." My mother burst into tears while my father threatened to disown me. I closed the door on them and immediately called my lawyer. Since then, I've learned several disturbing things. 1, my parents had created falsified documents showing they had provided the down payment for my apartment. 2, they had listed my apartment for sale with 3 different real estate agencies. 3, they had already accepted a preliminary offer from a buyer and received a small earnest money deposit. 4, they had told my extended family that I had agreed to sell my apartment to help my sister's failing business. My lawyer has sent formal cease and desist letters to my parents and to all the real estate agencies they contacted. He's also investigating possible criminal charges, though I'm still deciding whether to pursue that route. My sister called me yesterday not to apologize but to berate me for ruining their plans and being selfish. She actually said, "It's just an apartment, James. I need this business to succeed, and you're standing in the way of my dreams." I've blocked her number for now, along with my parents. Several family members have reached out, some supporting me, but others claiming I'm tearing the family apart over material possessions. The next steps are clear legally, but emotionally, I'm still processing everything. How do you come to terms with the fact that your own parents and sister believe they're entitled to take your home from you? That they went so far as to forge documents and make plans for your property without your knowledge? I'll be speaking with a therapist next week to help work through this. For now, I'm focused on legally protecting myself and my property. I'll update again when there are significant developments. Thank you to everyone who offered advice on my original post. I never imagined I'd need it quite so soon. Update 2, 3 months later. It's been 3 months since I caught my parents in the act of trying to sell my apartment, and I wanted to provide an update on the situation since many of you have asked. The legal aspects have largely been resolved. My cease and desist letters were effective. All real estate agencies confirmed they've terminated any listings related to my property. My lawyer sent formal documentation proving my sole ownership to each agency, along with a stern warning about the legal consequences of accepting fraudulent listings in the future. As for my parents, they initially doubled down on their position. 2 days after our confrontation, my father left a voicemail claiming I was blowing everything out of proportion and that they were just trying to help the family. He suggested we sit down like adults to discuss how to make this work for everyone, as if selling my home without my consent was still somehow on the table. I didn't respond. Instead, my lawyer sent them a comprehensive legal letter outlining 1 documentation of my sole ownership, 2 evidence of their unauthorized entry, 3 records of their fraudulent claims to real estate agencies, 4, a clear statement of potential criminal charges they could face, 5, a formal demand to cease all attempts to access or sell my property. The letter concluded with a warning that any further attempts would result in immediate legal action, including criminal charges for fraud, forgery, and trespassing. This finally seemed to get through to them. My mother called sobbing 2 days later, but it wasn't the apology I expected. Instead, she lamented that I chose property over family and that my selfishness was destroying Jennifer's future. I remained calm and told her I had nothing more to say until they acknowledged the severity of their actions and offered a genuine apology. The family fallout has been significant. Word spread quickly among extended relatives, creating distinct factions. Group 1, my parents' supporters who believe family resources should be shared and that I'm being selfish for not helping my sister. Group 2, relatives who are appalled by my parents' actions and have reached out to offer support. Group 3, those trying to stay neutral, suggesting we all just move past this for the sake of family harmony. I've maintained minimal contact with most of them, focusing instead on processing everything with my therapist. These sessions have been invaluable, helping me recognize patterns of favoritism and manipulation that I had normalized throughout my life. One particular breakthrough came when discussing a childhood memory. When I was 16, I saved for months to buy a laptop for school, only to have my parents borrow the money for my sister's dance competition fees. They never repaid it, insisting later that it was my duty to support the family's needs. This pattern has repeated throughout our lives. My achievements and resources were treated as family property, while Jennifer's needs always took priority. As for Jennifer, she eventually sent me a text that read, "I hope you're happy. My business is failing because of you. Thanks for nothing." I didn't respond. Her business, from what I've gathered through mutual friends, was in trouble long before the situation. My apartment would have just been a temporary band-aid on deeper financial problems. Security-wise, I've upgraded my system with better cameras and added window sensors. I've also informed my building management about the situation, and they've been surprisingly supportive, adding notes to their security protocols about unauthorized visitors claiming to be my family. 3 weeks ago, my mother showed up unannounced. My camera alerted me, but I was at work. She couldn't get in but left a letter under my door, which mostly consisted of guilt, tripping, and justifications, rather than a genuine apology. She wrote that I always had things easier than Jennifer, and that my refusal to help family in need showed my true character. She concluded by saying they would forgive me when I was ready to be part of the family again. I've kept the letter as documentation, but haven't responded. My therapist and I have been working on establishing healthy boundaries, and engaging with these manipulative tactics would only set me back. Financially, I've taken steps to protect myself beyond just my apartment. I've placed a freeze on my credit, I changed all my financial passwords and security questions, I moved my accounts to a new bank where my family has no history. I set up alerts for any inquiries about my financial information. I created a will explicitly stating my wishes for my assets. The most surprising development came last month, when my uncle, my father's brother, reached out. We've never been particularly close, but he wanted to meet for coffee. During our conversation, he revealed that my parents had done something similar years ago with his mother's property, attempting to redistribute family assets without proper consultation. He distanced himself from them since, and he warned me to remain vigilant. This conversation was eye-opening, suggesting that my parents' behavior wasn't just about me or my sister, but part of a deeper pattern of entitlement to others' property. I'm still processing everything, but I'm in a much better place mentally than I was 3 months ago. The shock has worn off, replaced by a clearer understanding of my family dynamics and a stronger commitment to protecting myself. I've also realized how many healthy, supportive relationships I have outside my immediate family friends who are horrified on my behalf, and colleagues who've checked in regularly to make sure I'm doing okay. I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with my parents and sister. For now, I'm keeping my distance while focusing on my own well-being. I'll update again if there are significant developments, but I suspect the legal threat has put an end to their attempts to sell my apartment, if not to their belief that they were somehow justified in doing so. Final update 6 months later. It's been 6 months since my initial post, and I'm here with what will likely be my final update. Many of you have reached out asking how things developed, and I appreciate your concern and support throughout this bizarre and painful experience. The legal situation has been completely resolved. No further attempts have been made to access or sell my apartment, and my upgraded security system hasn't caught any suspicious activity. The cease and desist letters were effective, and my lawyer confirms that from a legal standpoint, the case is essentially closed unless I decide to pursue further action against my parents for their earlier behavior. After careful consideration, I've decided not to press criminal charges. This decision wasn't made to absolve my parents of responsibility, but rather to free myself from an extended legal battle that would keep me tethered to this situation. My therapist helped me realize that moving forward doesn't require legal vengeance, just protection and closure. As for my relationship with my family, I've made some difficult but necessary decisions. My parents reached out about 2 months ago through a formal letter, not a text or email, but an actual letter on stationery. The contents were mixed. They acknowledged that they may have overstepped, but still insisted they had my best interests at heart. They asked if we could meet to resolve our differences and reunite the family. After discussing it with my therapist, I agreed to meet them, but in a public place with clear boundaries. We met at a coffee shop near my office 3 weeks ago. The conversation was revealing. When I asked directly why they thought they had the right to sell my property, my father said something that crystallized everything. Parents always know what's best for their children, and sometimes tough decisions need to be made for the good of the whole family. My mother nodded along, adding, "We've always helped both our children equally. You just don't see how much we've sacrificed for you." I remained calm and asked for specific examples of these sacrifices. They cited paying for my high school activities, which I had worked part-time jobs to fund myself, and emotional support during my career development. When I pointed out that they had paid for Jennifer's college in full, while I took out loans they claimed that was different because she needed more support. It became painfully clear during our conversation that they would never truly acknowledge the severity of what they had done. Their worldview is set. Jennifer deserves help. I don't. And family resources, including my independently acquired property, should be distributed according to their judgment, not ownership. After about an hour, I thanked them for meeting me and told them I had come to a decision about our relationship going forward. I can't have people in my life who don't respect my boundaries or my property rights. What you attempted to do was not just illegal. It was a profound betrayal of trust. Until you can genuinely acknowledge that and make amends, I need to keep my distance for my own well-being. My father started to argue, but I held up my hand. This isn't a negotiation. This is me informing you of my decision. I wish you well, but I need space, possibly permanently. I left the coffee shop feeling a strange mix of sadness and relief. Setting that boundary was difficult but necessary. As for Jennifer, I received a surprising email from her last month. Unlike our parents, she actually apologized. Sort of. She wrote that, while she still thought I could have helped more, she recognized that going behind my back wasn't right. She's apparently closed her failing business and taken a conventional job which she described as beneath her potential but necessary for now. I responded briefly acknowledging her apology, but making it clear that rebuilding trust would take time if it happens at all. We've exchanged a few short civil messages since then, but I'm maintaining emotional distance until I see consistent evidence of changed behavior. The extended family situation has mostly settled. Those who supported my parents' actions have largely stopped contacting me, which is honestly a relief. Those who were horrified by what happened have become closer allies, particularly my uncle, who warned me about my parents' past behavior. This experience has led me to reflect deeply on what family really means. I've realized that one true family respects boundaries and personal autonomy. 2, support should be given freely, not extracted through manipulation. 3, healthy relationships are reciprocal, not one-sided taking. 4, blood relation doesn't entitle anyone to your possessions. 5, sometimes creating distance is the healthiest choice. I've actually formed stronger connections with chosen family friends who were appropriately outraged on my behalf and who have shown up consistently during this difficult time. As for my apartment, I've reclaimed it emotionally as well as legally. I've repainted, rearranged furniture, and even replaced the front door with a more secure model. These changes have helped transform it from a space that felt violated back into a sanctuary that's truly mine. Professionally, I've thrived, despite the stress, even receiving a promotion last month. My colleagues have been surprisingly understanding when I needed flexibility for legal meetings or therapy appointments. Looking ahead, I'm focusing on building a life defined by healthy relationships and clear boundaries. I don't know if reconciliation with my parents will ever be possible. That would require a fundamental shift in how they view me, my sister, and our respective rights to autonomy. I'm not holding my breath, but I'm open to reassessing if genuine change occurs. For anyone facing similar family entitlement issues, my advice would be document everything. Set clear, non-negotiable boundaries, and don't let guilt override your right to protect yourself. I seek professional support, both legal and psychological. I recognize that sometimes distance is necessary for healing. This experience has been one of the most challenging of my life, but also one of the most clarifying. I now understand the dynamics that shaped my family relationships for decades, and I have the tools to ensure they don't control my future. Thank you to everyone who offered support and advice throughout this journey. Your validation helped me maintain my resolve during moments when I questioned whether I was overreacting. I wasn't, and neither are any of you facing similar boundary violations from family members who believe their relationship entitles them to your property or compliance. To close with something my therapist told me that resonated deeply. Family should be where you feel most respected, not least. If that's not the case, it's okay to redefine what family means to you. I never imagined that protecting my apartment would become the beginning of rebuilding my entire life. Nearly 2 years have passed since I discovered that my own parents had been secretly showing my home to strangers convinced they had every right to sell it and hand the money to my sister. Back then, every time I unlocked my front door, I wondered if someone had been inside again. Now when I step through that same doorway, I feel something I never truly experienced growing up: peace. This apartment isn't just property anymore. It's proof that I survived people who believed my hard work belonged to them. Over time, I stopped seeing these walls as reminders of betrayal and started seeing them as symbols of freedom. I repainted every room, replaced nearly every piece of furniture, filled the balcony with flowers and herbs, and slowly transformed every corner into something that reflected me instead of the fear that once lingered here. Friends visit often now, and more than one has commented that my home feels calm. I usually just smile because they have no idea how much effort went into creating that calm. Therapy helped more than I ever expected. At first, every session centered on my parents, my sister, and everything they had done. Eventually, my therapist gently pointed out that that my future deserved more attention than my past. That simple realization changed everything. Instead of asking why my parents treated me differently, I started asking myself what kind of life I wanted without constantly seeking their approval. The answer came slowly but clearly. I wanted relationships built on mutual respect. I wanted people who celebrated my successes instead of treating them as resources to be redistributed. Most importantly, I wanted to stop apologizing for protecting myself. Work became another unexpected blessing. Not long after everything settled legally, I received another promotion. Leading a larger team forced me to become the kind of person I had always wished I'd had growing up. I listened instead of assuming. I respected boundaries instead of crossing them. I encouraged people without making them feel indebted. It struck me one afternoon that every leadership decision I made was quietly rejecting the example my parents had set. That realization gave me a strange sense of closure. My friendships grew stronger too. The people who stood beside me during the worst months never disappeared once the drama ended. We celebrated birthdays together, took weekend trips, watched terrible movies, and built traditions that had nothing to do with obligation. One Thanksgiving, surrounded by friends laughing around my dining table, I realized something that caught me completely off guard. I hadn't spent the day wondering what my parents were doing or whether I should have reached out. There wasn't anger anymore. There was simply acceptance. Family had become something I chose rather than something I endured. Jennifer surprised me the most. Nearly a year after everything ended, she sent me another message. I almost deleted it without reading, expecting another accusation. Instead, I found the closest thing to a genuine apology I had ever received from her. She admitted she had spent years believing our parents whenever they said I could handle more because I was stronger. She confessed that she'd confused my independence with endless obligation. After her business collapsed and she was forced to rebuild her own life without anyone rescuing her, she finally understood how unfair everything had been. I didn't forgive her immediately. Trust doesn't work that way. But over the following months, she kept showing up consistently. No requests for money, no manipulation, just quiet conversations over coffee and honest attempts to rebuild something that should have existed long ago. We're not especially close, and maybe we never will be, but we're finally honest with each other. That feels like enough for now. My parents never really changed. Every holiday, another carefully written letter arrives, usually insisting they only wanted what was best for the family. Even after all this time, they still can't bring themselves to admit they tried to steal my home. I've stopped expecting that apology. Accepting that some people will never acknowledge the damage they've caused has been one of the hardest lessons I've learned. I don't hate them anymore, but I no longer mistake forgiveness for reconciliation. They live their lives, and I live mine. The distance isn't punishment, it's protection. One afternoon, while helping Mrs. Wilson carry groceries upstairs, she smiled and told me I seemed lighter than the frightened man she'd met outside the elevator years ago. I laughed and reminded her that none of this would have happened if she hadn't innocently asked me about the sale of my apartment. She insisted she hadn't done anything important, but she'll never know how much that single conversation changed my life. Sometimes the truth enters your life disguised as an ordinary question. A few months later, I volunteered to speak anonymously at a community seminar about fraud and protecting personal property. I shared my story, hoping it might help someone else recognize warning signs before things escalated. Afterward, several people approached me with stories of controlling parents, manipulative siblings, and relatives who believed family ties gave them ownership over someone else's life. Listening to them, I realized I wasn't alone. More importantly, neither were they. If my experience helped even one person set healthier boundaries, then maybe all that pain served a purpose after all. Looking back now, I used to think buying this apartment was my greatest accomplishment. I was wrong. Purchasing it took discipline and hard work, but keeping it took something far more difficult. It required me to believe that I deserved to own the life I had built. It required me to stop confusing guilt with love and obedience with respect. I finally understand that real family doesn't demand sacrifices they would never make themselves. They don't see your achievements as communal property or your kindness as permission to exploit you. They celebrate your success instead of claiming it. Every evening when I unlock my front door and step inside, I still appreciate the quiet. Not because the apartment is expensive or beautiful, but because every inch of it reminds me that I chose myself when it mattered most. I protected what I worked for. I refused to surrender my future to people who believed they were entitled to it. And after everything that happened, that's the victory I'm proudest of. My home is finally what it was always meant to be. Not just the place where I live, but the place where I belong.